Good evening. I'm Mike. This is Mike Texts It Out. And this is an Xbox. Actually, I'm just kidding. In reality, oh my gosh, this thing is a brick. This is an Xbox, really, the last generation Xbox, an Xbox One X. But yeah, this is actually an Xbox, not my phone. Yeah, if you follow the channel that is, and you noticed that I didn't do a video this week, a news video, is because there wasn't really much to talk about. There was some more Microsoft news. It was about how hardware revenue was down like 30%, and then them teasing that the next Xbox is going to be a PC, which everyone pretty much knows at this point, and then some executives at Microsoft saying that they're not competing with other consoles. They're somehow competing with TikTok, similar to with the Xbox One, and they were competing with, I don't know, cable and to be a set-top box. Whatever Microsoft's doing. So there wasn't really anything that was big that I felt like really covering this week. I might mention some of it in next week's video, but I decided that I wanted to do sort of a rant video about my feelings on the whole state of Xbox and their next steps, and most likely them doing a PC for the next console. So typically in my videos, I try to stick to the news, which means I stick to the stories, and then I might give my opinions on stories, but I don't really give my full opinion on individual consoles. And to be honest, for most of the generations I've had every console, at least the more modern generation, starting with like the PS2. So I'm really not a console fanboy overall, but I have had all of them, including the Xbox, since the original Xbox. I had the original one, I had the Xbox One, or sorry, the 360. I skipped the whole generation. The 360, the original one, I had like 3 or 4 of those through the red rings. Then later in the generation, I got the first S model, the one that they finally fixed the problem, and I got a Kinect, and the Kinect was fun. I like the original Kinect. And then after that, of course, I got the Xbox One with the Kinect, which the Kinect on the Xbox One was weirdly bad. I don't know how. Like the 360 one was fine. The one on the Xbox One was bad. Eventually, I traded that in and got the One S, and then I won this one close to the end of the generation, which is the Taco Bell Xbox One X. I still have it. It's actually not hooked up at the moment. I just kind of display it. But anyway, after that, I got the Series X when that came out, and that's the last Xbox that I bought. So I've had an iteration or multiple iterations of every Xbox that's come out so far. So yeah, I will say that I do like the Xbox. Generally speaking, I like all the consoles, but I do think that they all have their issues. It's just that Microsoft in particular has been in a weird spot since the Xbox One. So if you're not familiar with the whole backstory, the first Xbox came out same generation as the PS2 and GameCube, and it didn't really make a big splash. Like, it did okay. It had some standout games, of course, Halo and Halo 2, Halo 2 especially, and it kind of was the pioneer for online services like being done right on consoles, especially going into the 360 era. Like, it took a lot of stuff that they learned from the Xbox and brought that over with Xbox Live. And basically, Sony had to copy them during that Xbox 360 era with the PS3 as far as their online services to kind of catch up. Like, they set the standard kind of with achievements / now we have trophies, of course, on PlayStation. But, you know, no one was really doing that before Xbox, at least on home consoles, and then having your unified friends list. Like, literally, I played online on PS2, and you basically had to make an account for each game. So having like a unified account on one platform was huge. And the 360 did extremely well. It was out first. It was cheaper than the PS3. You know, they had some hardware issues. Let's not downplay that. The red ring thing got on my nerves. But generally speaking, it was a great system. And they had Halo 3 come out. They also had Halo 4. They had the Gears of War series debut on the Xbox 360. Of course, they were also the first one to get Elder Scrolls Oblivion. So they really had a lot of hard-hitting games. The technology as far as the online play was leaps and bounds above PlayStation at the beginning. So it was a very successful generation for Xbox in comparison to the original one. And I'm just restating all of this off of memory. So if I forget some stuff that came out during the generation, like games or specific things, I'm just kind of going down memory lane. But that being said, where they really hit the issue was with the Xbox One, specifically before it came out. So during the last generation, like I said, they got the head start on PS3, but Sony actually played it smart. They came out with good games. They lowered their prices over time, and then eventually by the end of the generation, they caught up to Xbox sales-wise. I think Xbox was like a little bit ahead, but essentially Sony had made up ground by the end of the generation. So when it came to going into the next generation with the PS4 and the Xbox One, Xbox feeling like, they kind of won that last generation, excluding the Wii. The Wii technically had the best sales, but that was its own separate thing. So we're just talking about PlayStation and Xbox right now. But they got really stupid before the launch of the Xbox One. They were trying to do this whole thing around digital games where every game was basically considered digital. The disc was going to be linked to your account. So to let people borrow games, even if it was a physical game, you basically had to like deauthorize a license from your account. They announced this before the Xbox came out. Then, because of this whole thing, they said it always had to be online, which, I mean, now is a lot more normal than it was back in 2013 or whenever this was. I believe it was like 2013, maybe like 2012. But yeah, people were also not happy about it. And then an executive, I forgot who it was, at the time got online and was like, well, if you don't have internet, that's like saying I'm not going to buy a vacuum because I don't have electricity. Like, you have to have internet to buy an Xbox. Then on top of that, the Xbox was launching with the Kinect, which they claim was required for the Xbox to work. And it was launching at $500 because you had to have the Kinect with it, whereas the PS4 was launching at $400. And also, PlayStation wasn't doing any of that stupid stuff that Xbox did. So, it just started off bad. It started off bad. Xbox did go back on everything except for the Kinect being required by launch. So, by launch, they went back on the whole, digital game thing and always been online. They went back on all that stuff except for the Kinect. They said the Kinect was required because the Xbox One was supposed to be the all-in-one box. It even had an HDMI in port so you could hook up your cable box to it and use your Xbox One to watch cable. And then you could have one box where you could watch cable and stream stuff or whatever, play games. It was supposed to be the one box to do it all, which is why they called it the Xbox One. Yes, it was a bad name. It was. I don't care what anybody says. Xbox One is a bad name. Xbox Series is still bad. I don't even know what that one means. At least the one somewhat had a meaning. But anyway, they launched. Of course, it was doing bad. So eventually they broke the requirement for the Kinect to be included, and they sold a model without the Kinect included for $400, which is the same price as the PS4. But by then it was already too late because people had already had a bad taste in their mouth, and they were like, I don't trust them after they said they wanted to do this weird digital game thing. So yeah, the launch was bad, and they never caught back up. Like the previous generation, the PS3 had the rough launch because of the price, but eventually they got some good games under their belt. They had like the Infamous series. I loved Infamous. Last of Us. Like there was just a lot of good games that they put out on PS3, and they really made it worth it to invest in the PS3, especially after they lowered the price and came out with the slim model and all that stuff. So Xbox One never really had that moment. Like for some reason, they just were having a hard time getting games out. And I don't know what was going on, but like the Xbox just had no standout games. I wouldn't say no standout games, but like Halo wasn't hitting as hard as it was on the 360 because, it was older at this point. It was the third console generation that Halo's been on. So people were kind of tired of it. Plus, Call of Duty happened during the 360 era, and that became the most popular multiplayer game. And so the multiplayer portion of Halo, which was, of course, the most popular portion, that kind of moved to Call of Duty. A lot of people moved to Call of Duty and other games. So, like, Halo just wasn't hitting as hard as it was before. Gears of War didn't really have the same luster as it did before either because it was kind of old. And they really failed to make any new properties or make any big swings with either of those franchises to get people to come back to Xbox. And so closer to the end of the generation, they kind of started Game Pass. Well, they said they were going to like, hey, if you buy a digital copy of this game, you'll get the game day one on PC and Xbox, which I thought was cool already. Then they started Game Pass, and if you had Game Pass, then you would get the PC version of the game or the console version of the game to play. And the price wasn't too bad. I can't remember how much it launched at, but I know it's not the $30 that Ultimate is now. It was actually a really good deal because even though Xbox didn't have a lot of first-party games, and the whole promise of Game Pass was like you get to play the first-party games on day one if you're subscribed, they made a lot of deals with a lot of different developers to bring games to Game Pass. So even though Xbox's output wasn't great, there are a lot of good day one games for the Xbox that for me personally, I think that it made Game Pass worth it. Of course, they started doing that towards the end of the Xbox generation. They also started doing streaming at some point, and it seemed like they were kind of posturing as if streaming was going to be the future, which I think that it's going to be a part of the future of games, but I don't think it's going to be the future. Like, I don't foresee anytime soon that people are going to stop buying consoles and just stream games, because there's all kinds of issues related to streaming just in general, especially when you're talking about people's home internet. So they kind of started posturing like, oh, this is going to be the future. And I think towards the end of the Xbox One generation is when they first started kind of deprioritizing the Xbox, I would say. That at least that's what it felt like to me as someone who was in the Xbox ecosystem, especially with like, oh, you can play on PC, you can stream, you don't have to play it on Xbox. So that really started to feel like maybe I don't need an Xbox. And I went into the Series X generation, well, X and S, thinking like, I already just play all the games on PC anyway. Like, I barely play any games on Xbox. Like, this brick, I don't think I played any games on it, because by the time I got it, I was already playing everything on PC. So I went in there and I was like, you know what? I really don't need an Xbox. But I still got one anyway, because I was curious and I had to see how it was. But realistically, I don't play that many games on Xbox anymore. I play most of those games on PC, which seemed intentional. It seemed like, okay, this is what Microsoft wants. They want people to just play it on whatever platform they want to. And this was their way, in my opinion, of trying to get more market share, because at this point, with their failure for whatever reason to put out games, they they wanted to compete in a different market. They wanted to compete on PC. They wanted to compete on cloud streaming. So that's why they started kind of deprioritizing the Xbox hardware and being like, look, just buy the game, subscribe to Game Pass. Like, that's all we care about. And so that's why I think now this move to them basically being a PC is like a no-brainer for them, because they already basically been trying to move away from the console space anyway, because them basically making the same console as PlayStation, like the Xbox One and PS4, the Xbox Series and the PS5, they're all basically the same. Like, there's some small hardware differences. Like, the PS5 has a faster SSD. Otherwise, they're basically the same. They're both running a very similar custom AMD chip. Like, horsepower-wise, there's not a huge difference. Of course, there's a PS5 Pro, and I think that console was not needed this generation, because I don't feel like they've really hit the ceiling of the PS5. But anyway, of course, they have the PS5 Pro, and then Xbox doesn't have an answer to that, but I don't think it's necessary. But anyway, yeah. Going into this generation, we really started to see them, put games on PlayStation, and that was shocking at first. With the recent announcement of that remastered Halo campaign, or Halo Campaign Edition, coming to PS5, that was kind of just like, okay, well, at this point, you got Forza, you got a Gears game, now you're going to have a Halo game coming to PS5, so they're really saying, like, you don't need an Xbox, and I think that's why we're at the point where, like, the next one's probably going to be a PC. So how I feel about it personally, while it makes sense, there's still somewhat of a barrier to get people to play PC games. So I think that this strategy for them, I don't think it's going to work. I just don't feel like it's going to work, because people who play on PC, I don't see them wanting to buy an Xbox branded PC. And I don't think that people that would buy a console, like my friend, like I have a very close friend that he's been an Xbox fan since the 360. He's only bought Xboxes. He got the Series X. He had the Xbox One. Like, he's only bought Xboxes. But I don't see him wanting to buy something that's a PC. Like, I just don't see him wanting to tinker with it. The thing is, you can put whatever interface you want over a PC, but it's still a PC. It's still going to have issues, and you're still going to have to be able to troubleshoot it. He barely wants to even troubleshoot his internet when that goes out. Like, he barely wants to deal with it. So I don't think that he's going to want to deal with, like, oh, this game didn't install properly. And to be honest, I've used the Xbox app for a long time on PC. And for the most part, it works. Like, it's gotten better, but it's not a great experience. And that's what they're using as the backbone of this PC experience. If that's the launcher. There are sometimes issues where games just don't install, or they'll just do weird things and the download will fail. Like, it's not a foolproof, like, this is a console experience type app. I haven't tried the new experience with the ROG Xbox Ally. Once it's available, I probably will download it from my original ROG Ally and really give it a try. What I've seen of it, it's still just Windows in the background, and that's still gonna have Windows type issues. So I just don't see this appealing to people that are gonna buy a home console, especially because this thing is probably gonna be $800 or $900. Now I'm sure the next PlayStation is probably gonna be more expensive. I assume that a regular PS6 is probably gonna be around $600, but I still think that the Xbox PC is gonna come in a lot more expensive because PC hardware in general is more expensive unless Microsoft is going to take a hit on the price. And clearly, with the prices of their hardware going up and Game Pass going up, they're not going to do that. So the only chance that a cheaper Xbox might come out is if someone else makes a cheaper Xbox, branded Xbox, like ROG, like an ROG Xbox, like a regular Xbox, you know? So with them being a PC, that does open that door, like a possibility that anyone can make an Xbox now. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be successful because I don't think that console people are going to want to pay for an Xbox that's $900 and then have to deal with the technical headaches that are potentially coming from a thing that's running Windows. And then PC gamers, they're probably just going to buy a regular PC. So I don't know who this will be serving if that's the route that they're going. Now, the rumors are saying that it's a hybrid console, so I don't know if it's still going to be able to emulate the Xbox Series console and play those games. Like, I don't know if it's going to have like a disc drive accessory you can hook up to it and it'll still play those games, or like you can download those games or whatever the case is. Then that's kind of a different spin on, you know, the whole PC thing. So that could be something unique. But again, I don't really foresee that being enough to drive those people that want a traditional console to the Xbox, which means the only option is going to be PlayStation, which also sucks because I don't think PlayStation's behaviors, even now with them being the leader, are always great and the most consumer friendly. And without any competition other than Nintendo, who's also on their own like cycle and own hybrid type thing with their handheld console, not really a direct competitor anymore. So that's really going to leave PlayStation unchecked and leave them the main driver in the console space, which is what I don't want. So I kind of want Xbox to keep making a traditional console, but I know that that doesn't really make sense for them for the direction they've gone with putting games everywhere and cloud streaming. Like, they're basically going to be a publisher and they're going to put out Xbox branded hardware that is really just a PC. And then eventually I think it's going to be like they're not even going to be making the next Xbox. They're going to partner with somebody and like, oh, this is going to be the next Xbox. But then again, if it's a PC, they wouldn't really need to do generations because PCs are constantly getting upgraded. So like there's always new parts coming out. NVIDIA and AMD come out with new graphics cards every few years. There's new CPUs that come out every year from AMD and Intel. So it's just a whole different ball game, but it's not going to be the same as a traditional console. And unfortunately, Microsoft put themselves in this spot. And the worst part is they're not even positioning themselves to be successful as a software company after raising the price of Game Pass. Because Game Pass Ultimate, which of course is the best tier, at least when it was more reasonably priced, it was like, man, I'm getting a really good deal. Now, obviously, the reason that they're raising the prices is because they did buy Bethesda. They bought Activision, which they also gave them Blizzard, and they bought a bunch of other studios, and they starting to get these games on there. Like, as soon as they started getting Call of Duty, and they got some big hits, like they got Indiana Jones, they're just like, whatever. Now we feel like the service is worth more money. So I think that's what they're doing, but also that's been their main driver since the Xbox One. Since they messed up the Xbox One generation, it was like, come here and play our stuff on Game Pass because it's a really good deal. And that was the main reason to even buy an Xbox, in my opinion, because it wasn't for the exclusives. Because I mean, what do they have? But yeah, overall, I just feel like they're screwing up. Like, the main thing that they wanted to do was to get people to subscribe to Game Pass. It seems like that's been the thing since towards the middle/end of Xbox One generation. And then this generation, it was like, subscribe to Game Pass. It's a good deal. And that was supposed to take them to this next generation where basically they're not making a console anymore. They're making a PC. They're putting games on Switch. They're putting games on PlayStation. Like, that was supposed to lead this next generation. And then, of course, PC. And then ideally, I'm sure they would love to do this if they can get Game Pass on PlayStation and on Switch, and then people can subscribe similar to like Ubisoft Plus or something like that on the consoles. That's probably what they want to do, but at the price, I don't know if this is going to be successful. And the thing is, if Microsoft fails, they take down a lot of other companies that they bought. Like, what are they going to do with Activision and Bethesda if they decide, like, we're not even going to do games anymore? It doesn't make sense for us anymore. And Microsoft has done it before many times with many products. They're just going to zoom their way out of it. They're just going to zoom their way out of it. That's what they're going to do. They're going to zoom it out. They're going to Windows Phone it out. Like, they're going to Windows Phone the Xbox. I feel like that's what it's leading to. And then are they going to try to sell these studios? They're going to be like, we don't even care. We're just going to shut everything down. That's my biggest fear with the Xbox. And like I said, I don't see this path being successful. I hope that I'm wrong. And I hope that it is successful because I do want to see the people that are employed to make these games continue to make games, to make projects that they want to. Because like I said, there's a lot of studios under Microsoft. So it would be a big hit if they got out of gaming altogether. But I foresee the current direction is they're going to do this PC thing. They're going to focus more on subscription and cloud streaming. And then that's what it's going to be. But I just don't see a path to success for that unless they reevaluate prices, especially of Game Pass, and then possibly take a hit on the price of their first PC hybrid console. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think it's looking good. And I don't mean to sound negative. I don't like sounding negative about it because, like I said, I'd still want Microsoft to be in games, but I just don't know if that's going to happen. But let me know what you think in the comments. Sorry, this was kind of a ranty video. I don't even know how long this is going to be honest. I just started talking. I hit the record and started talking. And so everything that came out, it is what it is. I'll see y'all for another sensational Sunday. There will be news next week, I hope. There'll be news, whatever. I'll be back Sunday. Remember to do at least 2 things at the same time. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, blah, blah, blah. I know my outro. Peace.